He was a twisted serial killer, yet he married a police officer, a detective who had no idea who he truly was. To hide his real identity, he practiced fake smiles every single day. Years of training had made his smile so perfect that it looked completely genuine. Because of that, his detective wife hadn't noticed anything strange for more than 10 years. You couldn't even blame her, his act was flawless. Even their daughter adored him deeply. Every morning when he dropped her off at school, he would prepare a plate of fruit for the teacher to share with the children. This small gesture earned him the title of the warm-hearted father in the teacher's eyes. But the moment his daughter entered the school gate, his fake smile vanished, replaced by his true, cold expression. He lived quietly, running a small silver shop, keeping a low profile until one day, an unexpected visitor completely shattered his peaceful routine. As usual, he greeted the guest with his well-practiced smile, but when he saw who it was, both of them froze in shock. The man tried to act casual, but the air between them turned tense. The visitor attempted to say something, but before he could, the shop owner interrupted, saying the workshop was too busy and he would be closing soon. But the visitor called him by name, Hyun-soo, and asked cautiously, "Is it really you?" The shop owner smiled and replied, "I'm looking for Baek Shi-chang, the detective Che Ji-won's husband." The man grinned wider and invited him for tea. The visitor didn't understand his intention, but nervously sat down, his hands trembling. The owner's old friend tried to speak, but his words came out stuttered and weak. The shop owner pretended to stay calm, denying everything, then raised his cup and took a fake sip of tea, claiming he had to leave for work. But the man stopped him, saying, "Wait, let me pack a small gift for you. A meeting present for my childhood friend I haven't seen in 18 years. Though the visitor said it wasn't necessary, Hyun-soo insisted that the gift was too heavy and asked him to fill out an address so it could be mailed later. The nervous man complied, but Hyun-soo's eyes scanned around the shop before quietly closing the curtains, locking the front door, and turning the music volume to maximum. He shut the shop early, took out a key, and opened a wooden hatch leading down to the basement. Inside, a man was tied to a chair. Hyun-soo grabbed a hammer from the wall and tore the tape off the prisoner's mouth. The captive, terrified, warned him that what he was doing was a serious crime, but Hyun-soo's eyes burned with rage. "Do you remember what you did to me 18 years ago?" he said coldly. "You all ganged up on me. I only called you a son of a dog, and you beat me until I was half dead. I swore that day, if I ever caught you again, I'd crush your head open." The man's face turned pale with fear as Hyun-soo ran the hammer across his face like a blade teasing its victim. The man cried and begged for mercy, saying he had been young and foolish back then, but Hyun-soo replied in a chilling voice, "You and your father are the same. No matter how pitiful you try to look, I feel nothing." When he left the basement, he instantly put on his kind father face again. His daughter ran to him, asking him to help dry her hair. Meanwhile, his wife, the detective, had gone to clean up the shop. Down in the basement, the tied-up man heard faint noises upstairs and desperately tried to call for help, but his voice wouldn't come out. At that moment, Hyun-soo realized his wife was at the shop and panicked, rushing back. But it was too late. His wife had already noticed something odd. Her brows furrowed as she saw shattered glass on the floor. Her husband calmly said he had accidentally dropped something, and she didn't suspect a thing, unaware that it was from his earlier fight with his childhood friend. Even though she was a detective, suspicion never once crossed her mind when it came to her husband. That night, however, she woke up in the middle of the night and noticed her husband wasn't beside her. The clock read 3:30 a.m. Thinking he might be in the living room, she got up to check, but the house was completely silent. Just then, the front door opened, and someone wearing a raincoat slowly entered. Her heart raced in fear until the person took off his hood. It was her husband. He explained with a smile that he had gone out to buy beer and fried chicken for her. She didn't doubt a word and even praised him for becoming more caring lately. But early the next morning, a murder case was reported at a nearby restaurant. The victim's brutal death made Detective Ji-won shiver. It was vicious beyond belief. Fortunately, there was a security camera above the scene, so the police checked the footage. When Ji-won saw the video, her eyes widened. Though the face was unclear, the raincoat looked eerily familiar. But she quickly dismissed the thought. Her husband was too gentle, too weak. Besides, the victim had left a voice message for a journalist before dying, saying that a man named Hyun-soo had been threatening him lately. Before he could finish the message, an intruder appeared at his door, and when he tried to grab a tool to defend himself, it was already too late. The police traced the last phone call to the victim's talent manager, but strangely, the man's phone had been off ever since. What Ji-won didn't know was that the manager was already imprisoned by none other than her husband, whose real name was Hyun-soo. He had entered the journalist's house using a passcode, demanding to know where his personal files were stored. The journalist stammered that all the information was on his computer, but when Hyun-soo checked, he realized there was nothing about him. Furious that he had been tricked, he lifted the hammer again. The journalist had indeed been stalling for time, hoping someone would come to save him. Meanwhile, Detective Ji-won went to the manager's house to investigate. The place seemed empty, which made her uneasy, so So she called the firefighters to break the door. Inside, Hyun-soo saw his wife through the window, his pupils shrinking in panic. When they broke in and searched every corner of the house, they found no one. None of them realized that outside, clinging to the wall of the 18th floor, a figure was standing perfectly still, Hyun-soo himself. His skill and agility were terrifying, but even the best physical strength has its limits. Later, their son said he saw Spider-Man outside the window, but when they looked, there was no one there. At that moment, Hyun-soo, thinking fast, called his wife and told her, "A journalist just came by the house looking for you." As expected, Ji-won immediately left the area to rush home, allowing him to escape. No one suspected that this man, who smiled so gently at home, was in fact the very monster they were all hunting. After leaving the journalist's house, Hyun-soo now faced a serious problem: how to explain his injuries and lies if anyone asked. To cover up, he rummaged through the journalist's belongings and found his frequently used camera, knowing deep down that the man must have hidden some private secrets inside it. As expected, he discovered the journalist's weak spot through the memory card. Without wasting time, he rushed back to his silver shop, opened the basement door, but as soon as he stepped in, the imprisoned journalist suddenly attacked him. However, the journalist was no match for Hyun-soo's strength. Still, desperate to survive, he fought back with all his might, and the two wrestled violently. Just then, Hyun-soo's wife arrived at the shop, and the moment she opened the door, she bumped into her husband. Seeing the wound on his face, she immediately asked with concern what had happened. At that moment, the injured journalist staggered out from inside, his face battered and bruised. Detective Ji-won looked at both men in confusion, but still tenderly helped her husband clean and bandage his wounds, eyes filled with worry and affection. Then, with calm authority, she grabbed a pair of handcuffs from the table and arrested the journalist on the spot for assault. The journalist panicked and called out to Hyun-soo for help, and Hyun-soo, pretending to be righteous, explained that it was all his fault. That when he saw the man lingering in the shop and refusing to leave, he thought he meant harm, so he pushed him out of fear, leading to a misunderstanding. His wife, however, scolded him gently, saying, "Stop making up stories. Even good people must have limits." The journalist rolled his eyes in disbelief, watching her look at him with disgust, unaware that just moments ago he and Hyun-soo had reached an agreement. He would keep Hyun-soo's real identity secret, and in return, Hyun-soo would make sure the incriminating video footage remained hidden. That recording could destroy the journalist's entire career if it ever got out. Hyun-soo's ability to act amazed even his accomplice. No wonder his wife had never once suspected him. Later, as the investigation continued, the police learned from the journalist that the murdered victim had been terrified of someone named Hyun-soo, and the victim's wife confirmed that her husband often received threatening late-night calls from a man by that name. She also mentioned that Hyun-soo and her husband once worked together at a restaurant. To learn more, the police visited that restaurant, and from the chef who once mentored him, they heard that Hyun-soo had always been cold, ungrateful, and completely devoid of empathy. "I once slipped and fell during service," the chef said bitterly, "and instead of helping me, he just laughed. I can never forget that face." These testimonies matched perfectly with the journalist's words, confirming that Hyun-soo suffered from severe antisocial personality disorder. All evidence pointed strongly to him as the murderer. Yet the journalist, who had known him since childhood, began to feel that something about the case didn't add up. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a nosy old lady who had raised Hyun-soo as a boy was watching the news. She heard that the suspect in the murder case was named Hyun-soo, but no photo had been released. Her curiosity sparked instantly. She opened her old photo albums, remembering that 5 years ago, when she visited her daughter in the city, she had accidentally taken a picture of him, Hyun-soo, all grown up, married, and with a child. She was certain she hadn't mistaken him. Without hesitation, she called the police to provide his photo. Detective Daewon, upon hearing this, immediately set out to visit the old woman. Meanwhile, the journalist, freshly released from the station, called Hyun-soo and asked if he still remembered Aunt Fuko, the woman who once cared for him. Together, they drove down a narrow countryside road toward her home, planning a sneaky operation. The journalist said, "Let's follow the plan. Aunt Fuko hasn't seen me for years, so she'll be happy. I'll chat with her casually, ask to see her photo albums, and when I find your photo, I'll slip it into the drawer. Then I'll invite her out for a late-night snack, giving you a chance to sneak in and retrieve the photo." Simple and clean. The plan seemed perfect, but they never expected an unexpected twist. When the journalist entered the house, he froze in horror. Aunt Fuko was lying on the floor, tightly bound with ropes. Shocked, he rushed to untie her, but with the last of her strength, she whispered 2 words, "Be careful." Before he could react, a blow struck his head from behind, his vision blurred instantly. Meanwhile, outside, Hyun-soo waited for the signal, but instead of seeing his friend escorting Aunt Fuko away, he spotted a suspicious suspicious man sneaking around. When a car approached, the stranger panicked and tried to run, but Hyun-soo, sensing danger, sprinted forward and tackled him effortlessly. Using his combat skills, he subdued the man and tore off his mask, yet he didn't recognize him. The stranger, however, immediately recognized Hyun-soo and demanded, "Where's my wife?" Hyun-soo was caught off guard, completely confused by the question, but before he could respond, police sirens wailed in the distance. Knowing Hyun-soo was after the photo, the stranger offered a deal. "Meet me at midnight at the inn nearby," he said, then shoved Hyun-soo aside and escaped. Just then, Detective Ji-won arrived at the scene, and Hyun-soo, realizing he was about to be caught, quickly leapt over a wall. But she saw him. Hyun-soo ran ahead, and Ji-won chased close behind. They both raced into an abandoned warehouse. Hyun-soo hid in the shadows, while Ji-won used her flashlight to search for the switch. The moment she found it and flipped it on, Hyun-soo smashed the light bulb in an instant. Startled, she covered her head, and he swiftly threw a cloth sack over it. She struggled violently, managing to push him backward. A sharp tool fell from above, about to strike her, but Hyun-soo grabbed her and shielded her with his own body, taking the hit silently. Gritting his teeth in pain, he made sure not to make a sound. Then he handcuffed her inside the warehouse and escaped quickly. He couldn't stop now. Someone still had his photo, and if anyone found it, everyone would know he was Hyun-soo. When Ji-won was rescued, the police found a watch at the scene, and her heart sank. It was one she knew too well. Turning it over, she saw the engraving, Baek Shi-cheng. Her mind went blank with dread. Meanwhile, Hyun-soo checked into a motel late that night, not to rest, but to prepare for the next confrontation. Staring at the clock on the wall, he smashed it with a single punch, picked up the sharpest piece of glass, wrapped it carefully with tape, and tested its edge against his hand. He looked out the window, fully aware that a deadly game was about to begin. Just then, a video call came through. It was his daughter. Hearing her soft, playful voice melted the coldness on his face for a moment. She said she missed him, and he gently promised to bring her a gift when he came home if she behaved well. But he didn't know that this would be a promise he could never keep, because at that very moment, a taxi driver had already started watching him. The driver motioned for him to get in first, and Hyun-soo hesitated, just as his childhood friend called, warning him that this driver was a dangerous man who would do anything for his wife. Unbeknownst to anyone, he was already sitting in the driver's car when the man finally showed him the photo he wanted. The moment Hyun-soo saw it, he snatched it away and tore it to pieces, because a single picture like that could ruin his whole life, and the driver sneered, "A man like you? Do you even deserve a wife and child?" Then he clamped a cloth over Hyun-soo's nose. Hyun-soo lunged and stabbed at him, managing to break free and run, but the cloth had been laced with a drugged scent, and though dizzy, Hyun-soo crawled toward a nearby fire and burned the shredded photos to ash. The driver, however, wasn't finished. He chased after him, and the motel landlady, seeing the commotion, called the police, saying a driver had knocked out and abducted her guest. At that moment, a phone rang nearby, and Hyun-soo, eyes wide, scrambled toward it and froze when he saw his daughter's face on the screen. She was calling him and then, through tears, begged for help. The landlady immediately relayed the call and the police, using the driver's location provided by the information team, sped toward the motel. But by then, Hyun-soo had already been taken to another place, his legs bound, while the driver sat by a pool watching him struggle, casually filling the pool with water and swallowing a calming pill as if to steel himself. Calmly, he asked Hyun-soo, "18 years ago, my wife got into your father's car. You're his son, right? Tell me, where did your father bury my wife?" Hyun-soo spat back in anger. "Move your pig brain. My father is dead. How would I know?" But 10 minutes later, the man was still demanding to know the whereabouts of his wife, and Hyun-soo, innocent of the answer, simply could not provide one. The driver watched coldly as Hyun-soo slowly sank beneath the water, seemingly unmoved. Perhaps 18 years of hard life had left him numb, until finally, Ji-won found the driver's position, and with her team went after him. Her partner dealt with the driver while she rushed to save her husband, but when she arrived, the sight of him floating in the pool, motionless, dropped her heart to the floor. Meanwhile, a little girl of 6 returned from school and proudly produced a huge workbook from her bag, which made her grandmother panic. She snatched the book, read a page, and, horrified at the child's level, began tearing pages while scolding that such strange behavior, learning so fast, would eventually destroy everyone. The girl burst into tears, and the frantic grandmother, softening, asked what would stop her crying, and then took her home to make an egg tart. And though she pretended she would never indulge the child, she fed her with a grandmother's tenderness. The child praised grandma's cooking as better than her mother's, and the old woman's face softened a little. Just then, the grandfather returned and asked what the fuss was about and why someone had been let in without notice. The wife stammered and, flustered, told their granddaughter to greet him, then was pulled into the bedroom where the husband scolded her, asking if she had any sense to let strangers come in, but she burst into tears saying the girl was only 6 and didn't understand. At that moment, the child suddenly said she needed the bathroom and ran after the passing maid, who glanced at her but kept walking. And when the girl ran to find the maid, the door was ajar and the maid nowhere to be seen. Unknown to them, the maid was hidden away in a secret compartment, tending to someone barely alive. Back at the house, the argument escalated. The man told his wife to think about their son lying in a hospital bed, and that line pierced the woman's heart. When she opened the door, she found her granddaughter standing there, and the man's words, thinly veiled, warned her to mind her mouth. The girl, after all she had been through, was pitiful. Her father had been in the hospital for 5 days and still hadn't woken, and her mother had stayed beside him the whole time. Then, one day, the man suddenly regained consciousness, his head throbbing as if it were about to explode. And with a stubborn motion, he ripped out the medical tubes, staggered out of bed, looked around as if testing the air, and when he saw his wife, he took a step back. She rushed to him and embraced him, his eyes rolling as he attempted to return the hug. The hospital director, his father, rushed in when he heard, relieved to see his son out of immediate danger but lost in thought, while the mother stormed in with a barrage of accusations, asking if he understood the gravity of his actions and whether he was gambling with his life. Before she could continue, the hospital director's husband cut in, telling everyone to calm down and stop saying too much, but the wife left feeling that something about her husband's family was strange and that secrets lurked beneath the surface, because while he'd been unconscious, he'd suddenly called her sister and begged to be allowed to live a normal life, to stop searching for him, and the name Du Xianshu had come up, which threw her into a panic she could no longer hide. Now, determined to learn the truth, she decided to re-examine her husband, and while he was still in the hospital, she prepared tools and went to his workshop. She had always trusted him and had assumed the basement held only junk, but she smashed the lock, opened the underground room, and found a nightmare. The workshop was eerily well-equipped, and she, trembling, put on gloves, prepared a mysterious liquid, and began spraying the floor. When she switched off the lights, the glow on the ground revealed stains that told the story of a past bloodshed. She could not have imagined that the man she had lived with for 10 years hid so many secrets. Looking at their daughter's baby walker in the corner, she felt her whole world tilt. The gentle, careful man she loved was in fact the suspect Beck Shicheng, whom the police had hunted for 14 years, and she, a policewoman, had never once suspected. Meanwhile, the husband who lay ill in the hospital had changed clothes into a doctor's coat, put on a mask, and calmly taken a syringe and medication from his father, the director, pushing a cart into a ward and injecting something into a patient who seemed unaware. As he left, he casually told the man in the bed that the pendant phone charm tied to him had once been given at their father's funeral to his sister, and that she had passed it to him, implying that the patient was looking to the charm to find his missing wife. But the man panicked upon hearing this and immediately demanded that Hyun-soo, who had just escaped the driver and the motel, explain himself to tell where his wife was buried. He pulled the needle out of the IV drip. He didn't want to die yet. Moments ago, he had already given up all hope, but now he realized he had been seeking revenge on the wrong person. Though his cancer had spread and he had barely 2 months to live, he still wanted, in his final days, to see his wife once more. Hyun-soo calmly told him not to worry. The switch wasn't even turned on. He had realized this man had never revealed his identity to the police, so there was no need to finish him off. More importantly, he had discovered someone else was secretly trying to frame him. The bloodstains his wife found in the basement were actually from his fight with his childhood friend. Soon, Hyun-soo was discharged and returned home, but his wife's suspicion grew stronger with every glance. Why had her husband's life turned so dark and secretive? All she wanted was the truth. She had to pretend she knew nothing, while desperately wanting to know everything. So, as a gesture for his recovery, she gifted him a wristwatch, not knowing that this very watch would later save his life. Then, with a heavy heart, she took off her wedding ring, the one she had worn for 10 years. Only now did she realize how false the word love could feel. Just earlier, she had received a call from her husband saying he had urgent business in East City. She acted calm and understanding, but seconds later, she saw his phone's location heading in the opposite direction. As everyone might think, he went to meet another woman, and like every cliche, they embraced and cried upon seeing each other. But this time, the truth was different. They were brother and sister, reunited after more than a decade apart. His sister was surprised that her brother, now married with a child, had come to find her out of nowhere. Hyun-soo explained that the pendant she had given him at their father's funeral actually belonged to a victim from 18 years ago, and because of it, the victim's husband believed he was an accomplice. His sister, shocked, had no idea. Outside the room, his wife overheard everything and finally felt relief. Her husband wasn't the killer. But then, the sister suddenly realized something. Her brother's wife was a police officer. Hyun-soo confirmed it, saying yes, she was not only a cop but also the detective investigating this very case, so he had to move carefully and avoid even the slightest mistake. When his sister asked if he loved his wife, the question made the eavesdropping wife's heart tighten. Hyun-soo answered coldly that he had never loved her and didn't even know what love was. His wife's heart shattered. All those years of marriage, nothing but one-sided love. When they returned home, Hyun-soo behaved playfully, trying to make her smile like usual, but she finally asked, "Do you love me?" He took her hand gently and kissed it on the lips. She didn't expose his lie. Maybe, as he said, he would continue living as Baek Shi-chang for the sake of their daughter, to give her a complete family, pretending as if he knew nothing. But one day, Hyun-soo noticed his wife's wedding ring was missing. Acting casual, he asked, "Where's your ring?" The detective wife calmly replied, "It must have slipped off when I was washing my hands. I left it in the bathroom." For some reason, that explanation unsettled him deeply. Women, however, often can't hide what's in their hearts. When he noticed her forced smiles, he asked softly, "What's bothering you?" "You can tell me, I want to help," but she blurted out, "My feelings for you have changed." Her husband, startled, asked, "Why would your feelings change so suddenly?" That question ignited her fury. "And what about your feelings?" she demanded. "Are they the same as before?" He replied calmly that his feelings had never changed, which only made her angrier. He thought she was just stressed from work, her mood swinging from exhaustion, but she snapped, "Don't act like you understand me. When I like someone, I like them. When I hate someone, I hate them. And right now, when I look at you, I feel disgusted. Every little thing you do makes me sick." Hyun-soo stared blankly and asked, "If you hate me so much, why are you crying?" She told him to figure it out himself, but Hyun-soo, who had never understood emotion since childhood, was confused and desperate. "Don't do anything," she told him. "That's what I want most." But panic filled his chest. In all their years of marriage, she had never spoken to him like this. He needed to do something for her. Unfortunately, what he did next was far from normal. One day, his mother was tidying his room, and as she lifted the bedsheet, she found a hidden box. Inside were photos of bound women and a blood-stained dagger. Terrified, she threw it away at once, unable to believe her own son could have done something so horrifying. Her son had always been brilliant, exceptional, yet now she was trembling before his darkness. Looking at the dagger, she thought about ending her own life, but then she saw her son outside digging a hole in the ground, and beside it lay a man, still groaning in pain. Horrified, she approached quietly. Her son glanced at her and said calmly, "Go back inside, Mom. I'll handle this." He was about to bury the man alive, and he spoke as if it were nothing. Watching his practiced movements, she couldn't believe this was the same boy she had raised. Overcome by madness, she grabbed a knife and, while his back was turned, stabbed him. The blade sank deep, she didn't even know where, and her son collapsed to the ground, unconscious. He remained that way for over 10 years, his room filled with trophies and medals, yet now he was nothing but a living corpse, a vegetative body fed through injections. The man he had been burying that day was later rescued. When he woke up, he realized he wasn't in a hospital but in a stranger's home. Ignoring his wounds, he tried to leave, but he had no money, no food, nothing. Just then, an old man entered. Their eyes met, and instantly they recognized each other. The man knew this was the runaway boy who had disappeared at 14 Do Hyun-soo. The old man told him there was a way for both of them to get what they wanted. "From now on," he said, "you'll be my son, Baek Shi-chang. That way, I won't lose my chance to become hospital director, and you won't have to keep running." And so, from that moment, his identity changed. He became Baek Shi-chang, married, had a daughter, and lived an ordinary life. But when his daughter was born, he started to question himself. How could someone like him have a family of his own? When his wife asked what he was thinking, he admitted he was worried their daughter might not like him. But his fear was unnecessary. The little girl adored him, clung to him constantly, and for a while it seemed like their family might actually live happily ever after. ChatGPT said, "Life seemed peaceful and happy for a while, but what was meant to come eventually arrived." Recently, the news had been filled with reports about the serial murder case from 18 years ago, and that made the mother uneasy because she knew deep down that it was her son's doing. Guilt and grief tore through her heart. The boy she had raised so carefully, the one she had been so proud of, the genius everyone admired, was now a monster responsible for countless deaths. Shame replaced pride, and in her despair, she made a painful decision. She would rather see her son die than live in the shadow of his sins. She decided to remove his oxygen tank, and once he was gone, she would follow him. She wanted to ask him face to face what went wrong, what mistake in her love or teaching had led him down such a path. But just as she was about to do it, the nanny sent a message to the hospital director, who rushed home in panic. When he arrived and saw the oxygen tube pulled out, he shouted in rage at his wife, demanding how she could do such a thing and asking how he was supposed to live with this. He shoved her aside and ran to save their son, only to stop suddenly, frozen in disbelief. The son, who had been unconscious for 18 years, had just opened his eyes.